This video is to show you how to set up the scales. 3 of your 4 projects require a scale. Some of them are going to be even wash dry steps that don't run together, where you paint every other one, let it dry, and then paint every other one. On those, you're going to have a line in between each one. On any scale that doesn't have step by step, in other words, we're going to be doing wet and wet, controlled wet and wet, from either a hue or value to white paper or a hue or value to another side. Some of the projects have 4 scales. Actually, out of the 3, the first one has 2 scales, one with steps, one without. The second has 4, so you have 2 without and 2 with the squares divided. And all of these are 2 by 10. I put measurements on there for how to arrange them on a page, and also to have room so that you can redo any of them that don't work out. These have to be perfect. These are a big part of each project. So this is part of controlling your brush, controlling your hand, knowing how quickly to do it, knowing not to go over and over it, knowing not to blot or get streaky marks from having too small of a brush or too much saturation. This is tricky, but it's one of those skills you need to master as a watercolorist, and we just barely touched upon it in beginning. So this is a way to do this more efficiently. Before you even get anything out, if you just get your pencil, eraser, ruler, T-square, tape, and your individual 15 by 20 sheets, you'll be able to do all the setup now. It takes a little bit of time, but you want to make sure they're really clean and even, and you also want to make sure they're barely visible. This one is a little bit darker because this one's going to be the base for what I'm doing next to give you that shortcut. Rather than constantly measuring with the yardstick, to putting the dot, and getting it perfect. A lot of times they get really crooked and weird. You have to get it perfect on the first one. Once you get it perfect on the first one, what we're going to do now that we have tracing and carbon is trace the dots where things hit. So you can do all of your step-by-step ones at once, all of your blended ones at once, in terms of whether there's lines in between. This one's clearly a step-by-step. So think about that. In the first project you need 1 of those, in the second project you need 2 of those, and in the third project you need 2 of those. You can do your scales on the same page for 2 different projects. The second one, you'll need to do all 4 on one because there's 4, but you can combine your value scales with your local color scales later, and they're all boxes except for 1. So you could do 3 boxes and 1 blank on the first one, and then you could do 2 boxes and 2 smooth, and then on the last one you're already done because you did it on here. So basically it means you have 2 in the first, 4 in the second, 2 in the third. So you can combine that into 2 pages is what I'm saying. You could also cut it. You could also use scraps to do it. You could also, however you want to do it, separate. Use what's left over for test paper, whatever you want to do with that. But the first one can be pretty visible. But the next ones we're going to be using the tracing and transfer method because we want these to be so delicate, and we also don't want these to have any lines visible in between, just visible enough for you to see. So we're going to put this on here. It's just a shortcut, and if you want to tape it down, that's always better. And see, now you can see your scale. So I could do all of my step-by-step ones now. I could do, see, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, I have 4 more. So if you just put a dot in the corners where you did your good scale underneath, then when you take your T-square ruler, straight edge, whatever it is, you already have everything where it needs to be. Same thing when you do without these, you don't even need this part. When you're doing the long one, just 2 and 2. So that's the big shortcut plan. The other thing that's great is when you trace the dots on here and you go over them, you'll be able to see just a faint one. And you can even, the best thing to do would be, just go ahead and do it. This is upside down, so you always want to make sure. You can see the difference between the back of the paper and the front of the paper, but I'm just gonna make sure I have this the right way. So there's the front. Flip this, and now that I have this traced, I can line it up with tape, and I can measure where it falls to make sure I have it lined up. I could even do this. That's a good shortcut. I'm going to tape both sides. This is pretty simple stuff, but it's just helpful, a shortcut, you know. So then I tape the top. This is all the same method that we did on the yellow carbon method example. Now, this is all I have to do. Even faster for the longer one. And I can make as much pressure as I want because this yellow has been perfect. It's just visible enough for the artists and not this gaudy, horrible red or blue or, you know, outlined carbon. I'm so thrilled with this yellow. And I'm reusing. You can reuse this piece over and over and over. Just want to make sure that one looks a little funky. That's good. Looks crooked to me, but you get the idea. And this is better right there. And if you go over, it doesn't matter because you have yellow, so it's not going to be that visible. And like, okay, for example, I messed up because I was doing this too fast. But what's great is I can just keep going because it is yellow. That's better. And then all I have to do is switch my pen. So this allows you some error. Much better. So these are my points. And since we talked about not having lines in between that are visible, you're not going to go over the yellow inside. On a scale, you don't want the edge visible. You don't want to have a heavy line or any line because you want the shapes, the even wash shapes, to stand on their own. So now you can see I have a yellow scale and it's visible enough that I can fill it in and have it look like shapes instead of lines. And I can even erase some of this because I did press a little too hard because I was trying to make it more visible on the camera. But you can go like this and that still looks better than this. But I can also do that on here. So anyway, that's the shortcut, and you can do your all your scales ready to go so that before each project you have your warm-up set up. And you can even label these. Like if I do this one, my first, for the first project, this is going to be black and this is going to be white paper. And I'm going to do steps. I don't need to do the next, but this is going to be, well, I could just say dark gray. medium gray, light gray. But we're going to create very even stair steps by painting every other. Now on this one, since it still has the lines inside, because on this one you're also going to do one without the lines, but since I'm labeling all my line ones, one of the ones is going to be red, or not red, but your hue of choice. So we might as well not write that in there yet. On the second one, it's either going to be one of 3 colors, so there's no reason to label that, but one side's going to be black, and on the second one side's going to be blank. And then on the local color ones, you can label those later too. So I would say just create all your scales, label the first one because that's our value study, and then it's just a shortcut. So that's it.